Hey everyone, it's Stephen Francis, also known as Dr. Blackard.
And I look very Canadian this fine morning in Alberta. I almost said Alberta,
Alberta, BC.
BC.
That my brain also went to the exact same place.
In Alberta, BC,
In Alberta,
where
BC, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, PEI, Newfoundland.
y'all will never dox me at this rate. Haha, suckers.
Yeah, in this episode 197 of the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast, we are coming very close to 200 episodes. We've been doing this for a long time, Victoria.
We have. It's
I
weird to think about.
We got a comment a couple weeks ago, and someone was like, "Oh man, I just rediscovered your podcast. I used to listen to it years ago, and then I stopped, and then like I found it again, and I read that, and I was like,
Oh, that's so weird to think about. Yeah, while I was coming up to these fine non-hilled areas
uh huh,
of Alberta, BC on the drive, I was talking to our father about how much I think this podcast has helped me grow my analytical skills
mm-hmm.
as a person and have a symbiotic relationship with my schooling, which I, yeah, I don't really think Dad knew what I was talking about for the whole conversation, but that's fine.
Yeah, it's crazy how long we've been doing it, and I'm sure how much of an impact, just in like even beyond that, like in our just the way we can do public presentations. It's not like we didn't
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of public speaking beforehand. Um,
I
but
just think it's useful. And also, I
yeah.
did have this moment where I unintentionally made myself emotional like 2 days ago,
Mm-hmm.
where I was talking about the podcast and Kathy being on it, and then us finding out that we had an impact on one of the episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe my words were, and I got almost kind of choked up halfway through the sentence because I realized, like, oh, I accidentally got deep there in a normal conversation. It's
Whoops.
just nice to realize that you had an impact on something that had such an impact on you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just kind of just like froze and I was just like, anyway, have a nice night. And then I walked away.
Who are you talking to?
I was talking to Gary.
Okay. You make it sound like you were just like talking to someone in a drive-through window or something. Like,
No, no, that'd be funny though.
sir, this isn't Arby's. Um,
But yeah,
okay, so
it's
we.
just because it was a very normal conversation
Uh-huh.
up until that point. And then I was just like, oh no,
Whoops.
I felt emotions. I need to leave.
Like some kind of teenage girl.
What y'all feel emotion? I feel emotions every day.
Um, so we are starting talking about album 70, Finding a Way. We got the first two episodes today. They are what, Victoria?
I closed. I closed it. I
Uh,
closed it. Oh, why are you doing me like this? Jumping off, jumping in,
mm-hmm.
and Christmas bells.
Yes.
Can I just say off the bat,
Mm-hmm.
I like the title, Jumping Off, Jumping In. I don't like the title, Christmas bells.
I thought jumping off, obviously we're kind of confused about jumping off, jumping in as the title. And then when we got to the end of the episode, I was like, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
I mean,
I
it was
didn't
one of those
understand the
episode
title.
titles where it's just like,
Then I listened to the episode, and now I
I
do
think it'll make
understand
more
the
sense
title.
once I've heard it, and it did. It was a good title, honestly. I liked it.
Yeah. Okay, what happens in episode 904, Jumping Off, Jumping In, written by Marshall Younger?
So in this episode, it starts with I almost said Valerie, not Valerie. Why do I always want to say Valerie's
Bridget.
name? Thank you, Bridget. And she's in the hospital, and she almost drowned in Trickle Lake, and Jay and Wyatt and one of the kids from that new family, Cooper, thank you, were the ones to save her. And no, wait, no, wait,
Mm-hmm.
no, wait,
Mm-hmm.
no, wait.
She's
I
not
got
the
it
one in the
right.
hospital at the beginning.
It starts off with Wyatt in the hospital.
Yes.
And he tried jumping off like a roof or something
A
like
shed,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, a shed. pulling a young Wit, which Wit comments on. Wit was very, at the beginning of this episode, why it's like an emergency and everyone's really stressed out and worried about his health and safety. And Wit was just like, good job, I did that when I was a kid too, little adventurer. And I was like, Wit, no! It was such I slap floor vibes. It was so strong.
I thought it was so funny. I was gonna wait till we were like talking through stuff, but yeah, because at first Wit says to Bridget, he was like, "Why would Wyatt just go and jump off a shed? That's crazy. I never did that as a kid in any way that's documented in episode art visually for an episode that happened." And I was like, but then a minute later he acknowledged it, and then in the end Wyatt was like, "I just jumped off the shed because." I don't know, no specific reason. And Wit was like, cool, I can respect that.
It was like, same, man who takes after my own heart.
I thought it was very funny.
It was pretty funny, but at the same time I was like, Wit, no.
It's
Wit,
like,
please.
We've all been there. Who hasn't jumped off a shed because they were trying to fly?
And Bridget and Jay are just staring at Wit, and the mom's just glaring daggers at Wit. She's like, get out of here.
They're like, Wit, lecture our son. And Wit's like, yeah, what kind of kid would be dumb enough to jump off a roof because they tied chicken feathers to their arms? And she's like, he didn't have chicken feathers on his arms. He's like, who would
Wednesday,
do that?
Blah, 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 specific day at this time, as written in this book. Pulls it out of his
Available now in bookstores everywhere.
Only $19.99.
Yeah, except it's not in the book, it's in the episode, but whatever.
Yeah. Whatever. So Jay comes into the hospital, and him and Wyatt have been hanging out a lot recently. And we find out that Wyatt's been acting really weird around Jay and been doing like all this reckless stuff. And Bridget almost did drown in Trickle Lake. And Jay, Wyatt, and Cooper were the ones to rescue her. And she's been going to see a therapist.
Well, I think she went once, but then she didn't go anymore, right?
Yeah. But like when they said like
fine.
Bridget was going to see a therapist,
hoops.
I was just like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. Bridget would do really well with a therapist. And she's like, therapists are dumb. I'm not going back. And I was like, Bridget, no, you need a therapist for so many reasons, so many characters in this show.
Maybe so.
Need a therapist. Connie she would thrive with a therapist. Can I just say that?
That's true.
Like someone to just like talk to about all of the stuff she's going through a lot. Like I think she would do very well with a therapist.
I think everyone would.
Most characters
generally
should get
speaking,
honestly.
I think most real life people would.
I think everyone should have a therapist. I think all the therapists should also have therapists. It's one of those things where I'm like, but if I have therapist and everyone have therapist, who does therapist have to therapist them?
Yeah.
So then Wit starts trying to like backtrack and find out what happened and why everything's been going on. And he talks to...
It's like something sus about this story.
Yeah. So he talks to Bridget and he talks to Jay and then he talks to Cooper and eventually he's able to like piece together everything that happened. So basically, I almost said Valerie again. Bridget was starting to drown and then Wyatt was with her and Jay was like walking by on the beach basically while he was talking to Wyatt or something like that. And then
but when there was only one set of footsteps, that's where Jay was helping Wyatt pull Bridget into the water.
Yeah. Did you say pull Bridget into the water? You mean
out of the water?
Oh no, Jay, no.
Oh no.
Oh no, Jay. So basically Valerie jumped in and she kind of like, I guess, knocked the air out of herself.
She belly flopped so hard that she died.
Yeah. It's like the GTA death animation the second she hits the water.
Wasted.
And so then Wyatt and Jay notice that like she's not coming up for air. And then they start freaking out. And then Wyatt goes in to pull Bridget out. And Jay runs to find someone to help, and Cooper is the lifeguard, so Cooper's able to help, and the three of them are able to get her back on the beach and then take her to emergency. And, but like, Wyatt kind of freezes because when he gets Bridget back to the beach, he doesn't remember, like, how to do CPR properly. So then Jay starts panicking and doesn't really know what to do, and kind of gets after Wyatt a little bit before he goes to run and get Cooper.
I think it was after the fact, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, he kind of freaks out at the moment. Wyatt, like, why don't you know this and stuff? And then afterwards, he was just like, man, you're no hero like your dad, army man, sergeant guy.
Army Hammer.
Yeah. And then Captain Hammer. And then I just re-listened to that on the road trip, and I was like, man, this musical's so sad and so good.
Anyways.
And then Wyatt gets really upset, and he wants to, like, prove his bravery, so he starts doing all this, like, dumb, reckless stuff, and then everyone finds out about it, and then Bridget's like, I'm going to recreate my drowning, but fake it, and everyone's like, that is a horrible idea for so many reasons, but, like, everyone decides to show up. Literally everyone who was in the episode is there, including her mom, including Cooper, including Whit, and they're all watching this, and Bridget, like, berates Jay for saying all that stuff to Wyatt, which was very good. I really like Bridget. I'm gonna put her among, like, the unique female characters list we have in Odyssey, because I think she's a very good character. Up there with Jillian and stuff.
I was about to say, we need Jillian to come back. Has been too many episodes since we heard from Jillian.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking she should be in this album, hopefully.
Yeah.
Probably.
I hope so.
I hope Jillian's in every episode, honestly, if only just mentioned. And so then she's like, Jay, you're gonna pretend to fail at bringing me out, which will not be hard because you have skinny little chicken arms. And he's like, how dare you? And then she fakes drowning.
Jay, you can hide. You can hide in the seaweed because it is the bush of the sea.
And then Bridget has a panic attack when she starts, like, faking drowning, which actually does cause her to, like, basically start drowning again. And Jay is a weak little baby man, so he can't pull her out. And that's when Wyatt shows up, and he's just like, what is wrong with all of you people? Why are you just standing there watching this? And then he jumps in the water and gets her out, and then he does, like, the CPR, or I don't think he has to do CPR, actually, does he?
Probably not, because Cooper was there.
Yeah, I don't remember. Anyway, so he gets her out, and then she's just like, thank you, you're a hero, and stuff like that. And everyone's like, good job, you reacted way faster than us, child who just got here 5 seconds ago, and us adults who knew this would happen the whole time and have been here for 20 minutes.
And he was like, I recognized that it was real drowning and not fake drowning, because I've seen Bridget real drowning before. Thanks, it's the trauma.
And yeah, that's the episode. I was, after the last episode with Jay, I kind of touched on this on the podcast before.
Which I'd forgotten about when listening to this episode until it was after that I was editing the previous episode and remembered you said a thing about it.
See, when you got upset, I was thinking, like, you're not going to remember that I said this until
and I didn't.
Done the episode anyway, so there you go.
I forgot you even said Jay would be in an episode. Exactly.
So, at first I was kind of like, on Jay being in this episode, because we just had the one where he was like blackmailing all those kids and stuff, which sounds even worse out of context. And so I was thinking, like, oh, we just need some, like, good old classic Jay material, and we got a lot of that in this episode.
He was better than not in this episode. I really
liked him. Yeah, I loved him in this episode. We got, like, there were all these things. I don't know if you remember this at all. He used to always talk about, like, I always got the impression that he really wanted to be a stylist when he grew up and stuff. From the classic episodes, where he always talked about, like, hair care.
The classic episodes, like, that's a funny thing to think about, isn't it?
The classic Jay episodes, like 20 albums ago.
Classic
20 albums ago, think about that.
The classic post-hiatus episodes. Yeah, and it's just weird to say it.
When I was like 12.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like basically over half my lifetime ago. So, or no,
Almost.
no, that's not how math works. Almost half my lifetime ago.
Ooh.
Pretty much. Yeah. That's what happens when you're older than me. That's what happens when you dare to be older than I am.
I mean, still, the same thing as earlier when we were like, I listened to your podcast years ago and then stopped,
Yeah, exactly.
and now I'm re-listening to it, and I'm like...
Devin's just bones creak when he hears
I'm
that
turning
kind of
to
stuff.
dust like Mother Gothel.
And so we had Jay going in bushes in this episode, which I know he's done that a lot since coming back, but it's always still nice when it happens. He had that moment where it was like, what have you been doing? He's just like, oh, I've just been working on my nail care routine or whatever he said or something like that. And I was like, that's such a classic Jay line. So good. And the
The
fact
only
that
thing
like
we're missing is something about Elvis.
Yeah. Just also the fact that he wasn't like a despicable human being in this episode.
Uh-huh.
And like it shows the difference between him and Vance. I feel like we don't get enough of that anymore because Vance isn't really around anymore. So they kind of like took all of Vance's bad stuff and watered it down a little bit and put it into Jay, like kind of making him more of a Rodney than how he originally was. But like the big
he's like
difference...
Xehanort. He's come back together. He's recompleted.
Oh no, he's recompleted. The big difference between a character like Jay and Vance is the fact that like Jay is like really loving, even if it doesn't always seem that way, especially to characters who don't really interact with him much, or listeners who haven't heard that much of his episodes.
He's soft.
He's a very soft boy, and like he cares deeply about like people and things that are important to him and stuff like that. And like the difference between Vance and Jay is that Vance probably wouldn't have helped if Bridget was drowning. He probably would have just like left. But it's one of those things where
even if
like,
he didn't leave, he wouldn't have like run off screaming at the top of his lungs for someone to come.
Yeah, he would have been basically no help in that situation. But like Jay is one of those people where it's just like he might not be the nicest person, but he doesn't want to see anyone get like hurt. Pretty much.
He's mischievous.
Yeah, he's mischievous. He's not cruel.
Exactly.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
So like,
I thought you were, from what you had said when I went back and edited the last episode, I thought that you were primarily upset with Jay in this episode because of what he said to Wyatt. But I was like, on the whole, I really like Jay in this episode.
I adore Jay in this episode. I was a little upset about what he said to Wyatt, but honestly, I found it completely understandable because it was a very like high pressure situation, and Jay's never seen someone like almost die in front of him.
It was such
and
like
he was,
an
like,
impulsive
very high on adrenaline
thing that
freaking out.
He wouldn't necessarily have thought like, I'm saying this for the intention of hurting you, and more just kind of like, I'm decompressing from what just happened here. And I didn't realize at first, like they were like, oh, Bridget almost drowned is what they were saying at first, and it wasn't until we heard it back later that I was like, oh, Bridget did drown. Her heart stopped. Like,
yeah. And like at the very beginning of the episode, when Jay came in at like in the hospital, he was so soft when he was talking to Bridget that I actually stopped in my tracks, pulled out my phone, and had to rewind the episode to be like, did I hear that right? Because we haven't gotten soft Jay in like a long time. It's basically been since like the New Zealand 3-parter.
Yeah.
That we've gotten like him that soft.
So
when he was like talking about his dad.
So Carla's like, I'm worried about Wyatt because of this Jay kid, and it was like, oh, Jay, and Carla's like, you know him? And I was like, why are you surprised that Whit knows Jay? Like he doesn't know every single kid in this town. But
I think you say like everyone on Earth.
Yeah, also that too. So, like,
Whit is the first thing every child sees when they come into this world.
And when they wake up from a coma.
That too. He
Um,
needs to be there. He's obligated by law.
So at first, like it seemed like it was going to be like, oh, Jay's been peer pressuring the Wyatt into doing all these crazy stunts, which is what Widow's inquiring about. And Wyatt's like, nope, that's not it. And then when we see it, it's not even like Jay is passively kind of like pushing him towards doing these things. Jay is genuinely just like, at first, I thought it was like, oh, he's just being like so disinterested. Like, obviously, and that was the case. Like, Wyatt's pushing himself to do all these things because Jay is like, not noticing him, and he's like, look at me, be cool and brave and strong and neat and stuff. But I think after the fact, probably there may also have been an element of Jay is not acting interested in it because he's not trying to get Wyatt to like be encouraged by these things and actively be like, oh yes, feed me, this is working, I need to keep on doing this because this is what is making Jay pay attention to me.
Yeah, and also like I think there's a part of Jay that kind of wanted him to stop too.
Yeah,
And it was
that's
like
what I
a
mean.
little
He's like,
bit concerned
if
about his behavior.
if I give him attention from this, it's only going to make him want to do dangerous stuff more.
Like he did say he thought like Wyatt was a funny kid, but he never said it in a way where it was just like, yes, I actively want him to continue doing the dangerous things he's doing, and am like egging him on to do it.
It's just
you
like,
could tell he was just like, yeah, he's really weird, and I don't really know what his deal is, but
we were
he was
already
always there
before
like
before Bridget drowned. They were already like hanging out and stuff, and I was just like,
yeah.
oh, like Jay just he doesn't know what it's like for someone to look up to him and want to be his friend and impress him.
It's really sweet, honestly. I want more of Jay's positive Jay relationships with other kids who are his age. I think we need more of that because we basically only have negative ones at this point.
Yeah.
Also, second Jay episode in a row, not to mention Zoe at all. Like, Zoe's not in it. She doesn't show up.
Yeah,
She's not
they're
mentioned.
like, hey, Jay can be his own character outside of this like bad obsession, this bad unrequited obsession that he has.
And also, if you also put it in this way, Wyatt asked Jay to come lots of those times when Wyatt was about to do something, and Jay didn't have to. So, like, the fact that Jay did come is either indicative of he had nothing else to do that day, he was bored, he wanted the company because he genuinely really likes Wyatt, which I think, like, it's pretty objective. Like, you can pretty objectively say that he, like, at least has a bit of an affinity. Is that the right word for Wyatt?
Yeah. And it's nice because we know, apart from the Parkers, like, Wyatt doesn't have a lot of people to hang out with and do stuff with.
3, he came because he was low-key kind of worried about Wyatt and wanted to make sure he was okay, because chances were Wyatt was going to do, like, from what Jay knew, he had no idea otherwise, Wyatt would have done the dangerous thing even if Jay wasn't there. So the fact that Jay is there, if something bad happens, he can either actively help Wyatt and pull him out of the situation, or do what he did at the beach and go and find the closest authority figure who can offer, like, the right kind of care for the situation. So, I don't... If anyone comes at me to argue my facts, I will not listen.
I think it's worth pointing out, just so we don't, like, whoopify things too hard, but I don't know, maybe you could read something out of spinning this the other way, too. That, like,
I'm so starved for nice Jay content.
That in these scenarios that Jay was specifically pointing out, like, that the thing Wyatt was doing, like, was not as, like, dangerous and life-threatening as Wyatt was making it out to be, which at first glance at least was him being, like, disqualifying it from being something that would show, like, I am as brave as my dad is. But, I mean, I don't know. I feel like there's also a way you could spin those comments as, like, what we were saying before, and Jay is trying to, like, not feed Wyatt's inclination to, like, prove himself like that, and just be like, it's okay, it's fine, without having to, like, eat enough crow to apologize for it. And, I mean, in the end, you know what? Bridget and Wyatt both did get to be like their dad, because now they all have PTSD.
Oh, no!
But speaking of that, like, before it came back to Bridget being like, I'm going to drown myself again, throughout the episode, I was like, I'm really glad that everyone keeps talking about, since it's not the focus of the episode, and it did come back to that in the end, but like they keep on re-emphasizing the importance of making sure Bridget's mental health is okay after going through such a traumatic experience, and being like, just because you're saying you're okay and you're like, hey, you know, I survived technically and stuff, and I'm fine, it's cool, I'm fine, I'm normal. That like you do have stuff going on, and it is important to unpack that in a healthy way. And Bridget learned that in the end. It was very difficult to listen to, like the audio of it. It
The
was
voice
like
acting at the end of this,
it was
the
like
voice acting the whole episode, but especially the end, was just like really, really good and really intense.
it was, yeah, it was intense. It was like, it's difficult to listen to someone, you know, having a panic attack first off, but also drowning. It's like, oh, it's bad to hear.
Yeah. The vibes when Bridget came to Jay's house and then pulled him away by the ear were such like Priscilla, like Jay vibes, and I loved it so much. I need more of those two interacting very badly because I don't have Priscilla anymore, and
Yeah,
I'm so sad.
I hope that we do get more like actual relationship and development of that between like Wyatt and Jay as a friendship, and then also like string Bridget in there as well.
Yeah, I really like Wyatt and Bridget. Like I wasn't sure about either of them when they first appeared, but I really really like them.
Especially like you said, Bridget, in the relatively few number of episodes that she's had, has very quickly been developed into a very interesting character. And I really like that.
I think like every single episode she's in, which I think is like 4 or 5 at this point.
Not
maybe
a
only
lot.
4.
Yeah, it's like a new dimension to her character with every episode.
Yeah, exactly. She just gets like more and more multifaceted every single time she shows up, and I really, really enjoy it.
Yes. To have a character who is so rapidly growing in depth without them being like contradictory character facets. It's good. Yeah, it was a really good season opener. And then in the end, I was like,
so
oh,
good.
jumping off, jumping in, because he jumped off of the shed and then jumping into the water.
Oh, I thought it was like Bridget jumping off into the water, but him jumping off the shed makes a lot more sense. Yeah. Yeah, I just really, really liked Jay in this episode. How it comes off is like he's covering up like the truth about what he's actually doing at the beginning. And then it's like, oh, he didn't do anything wrong. And then it's like, oh, he did do something wrong, but he doesn't realize that he did.
And I think
basically,
honestly, as it was digging, Whit was digging more into things, and like you said, we assumed like, oh, Jay did something wrong, and that's what they're trying to cover up. But in the end, I feel like it was more that if anything, Jay would have been trying to cover up Wyatt not remembering the CPR, right? Because what else would Jay have in this series of events to tell that he would need to cover up? Because I mean, not, like what he said, that wouldn't come up in the event of the story anyways. So
yeah.
If there's anything Jay was trying to cover up by not telling the whole story, like Wyatt was trying to not say what he did, but the only thing Jay would be trying to hide by not telling it all was not saying what Wyatt did, because he didn't want anyone else to know that, you know, Wyatt blanked out in that moment.
In which case, that's a pretty like genuine move on his part, knowing like how upset and stressed out Wyatt was, and
has been. He knows all this stuff is because of that.
Yeah, and just like recognizing that, and then figuring out like what else is going on, and starting to like suss out the cause of it slowly as the episode goes on, but like kind of in the background in comparison to everyone else. I kind of a little bit wish there was slightly more Jay in this episode, but I do think we have like probably the proper amount that there should be. But yeah, and then him just like recognizing at the end he's made a mistake, and even though it's kind of forcibly, him being pulled into the ending, actually
Literally.
helping out the ending. And then when Wyatt's like, no, you have to do it. And Jay's like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, you're the only one who can do this. And Jay was just very good.
Ignore Whit, the former Navy person, and Cooper, the trained lifeguard over there.
I can't believe Whit, like, reacted so slowly. Like, it's Whit. Whit is one of those characters who can be as talented as the plot needs him to be. So, like, he has no excuse.
He has no excuse in any situation. That is the burden he bears by being a Mary Sue.
I'm surprised their mom reacted so slowly, too. But she might have been a little bit in shock or not realized it fast enough.
I mean, it makes sense to agree what Wyatt said, like, that he knew that Bridget was going to pretend to be drowning and that everyone else knew she was pretending, so they didn't realize that she was actually drowning, and he did first because he had just seen what it looks like when she's actually drowning, and that's why he knew that she wasn't faking it.
And the rough thing is, Jay realized it too, but he couldn't do anything, which probably just made him even more helpless than, like, at the beginning of the episode. Now he also has PTSD.
If there's one thing that Jay knows how to do in a bad situation, it's to keep a cool and level head.
I think Jay, as a character, is a lot more emotionally intelligent than people give him credit for. Like, especially
I feel like
in the
that
series.
was one of his first character traits that was established and just hasn't been as touched on as much for a long time.
Like, I think that's why he's so good at, which this is a weird backhanded compliment. That's why he's so good at manipulating people. It's because he's very emotionally intelligent and he can get, like, a good read on them, which isn't a good thing. It's a good thing to be emotionally intelligent. It's not a good thing to use that to manipulate people, but
unless
Jay
we're somewhere like the Green Ring conspiracy, where he was, like, you know, using it to try and be like, I need to stop that Buck kid and Mr. Skint from what they're doing.
This is gonna sound like such a bad sentence. There are positive ways to influence people in certain situations, which I guess counts as manipulation. But you know what I mean?
I know what
There's
you mean.
no good way to put it.
I know what you mean.
There's, like, good ways to influence situations so they have a positive outcome or people are able to do positive things, which unfortunately does still count under the definition of manipulation.
Yes.
But yeah, there's no good way to say that sentence.
No, there isn't, but I know what you mean.
No, there isn't. But yeah. I'm right, though, aren't I?
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
There's, like,
both in that and also that
forms.
there is no good way to word that, because I've said the exact same thing before. Like, there's no way to make it sound good.
This is an awful sentence. There's good forms of manipulation, which manipulation is kind of one of those words which is viewed really negatively.
It's the connotation during the denotation, right?
When it's, like, a neutral word, you can manipulate just means to, like,
to change
influence or change something. Like, I can manipulate a piece of metal, and that doesn't mean I'm destroying it or something like that.
Yeah, it literally just means to move with your hands, right?
Yeah.
I guess, because the man is hand.
And it's just one of those words where it's just really awkward because it has such, like, a negative connotation to it. But there's, like, good forms of manipulation and there's bad forms of manipulation. And
like a massage is a good form of manipulation.
Yeah, unless you're using it to induce torture. I don't know, but
unless you're getting, like, the poor man's hand massage in Final Fantasy VII, then it's bad.
That was bad.
The 100 gil one.
I would argue the expensive one was also bad.
Incorrect.
But that's just my opinion.
I showed Alex the cutscene of the poor one immediately after we did it, and they were like...
Yeah, that was my face too when I watched it.
So, this episode was very good. I really liked Jay in this episode.
Jay was so good in this episode.
I liked that he was, like, kind of framed as like we're only going to see him for bits where he speaks as like the antagonist kind of as first, until Whit digs through it and realizes like, oh, that's actually not what happened here, and he was actually trying to cover for Wyatt and help Wyatt by and large the whole time, but he just wasn't able to bring himself to like, and it makes sense, right? It's a very relatable thing where Wyatt or Jay's like, I don't want to like talk about feelings with you, Wyatt, so much that I'm gonna like address directly what happened and apologize for what I said. So I'm gonna try and like passively fix things by like steer you away from doing dangerous things and stuff like that.
And that's like a very Jay thing to do.
It's a very
He's
realistic
like
thing,
that.
right? We don't like
and
talking
realistic, but, like,
explicitly about our
especially
feelings. We like trying to just kind of like, I'm just gonna passively try and fix these things without having to say what I'm feeling out loud.
But like Jay of all characters in Odyssey is very like passive in a lot of ways.
Uh-huh.
He's very intelligent. Like I said,
he has a lot of faith in his schemes too. He's the kind of person who'll think like, I can fix this without even having to acknowledge that I'm a good person, and this will definitely work.
He's like, oh, that'll show him, and I did this good deed. Like Unbecoming Jay, I think, if I remember correctly. Like those early episodes, especially, those are like the ones that really made me love his character and like dig into his character and be fascinated by him. Was seeing like he was a lot like Bridget at the beginning, honestly, where each episode just like added another facet to his character and just made me more and more interested in him. And then it just started like degrading a little bit, and then he disappeared for a long time, and then he came back and he was obsessed with Zoe, and he kind of lost me for a bit, but now and then, like recently, he's had like a really good episode, like one
we need to get back to the roots of who Jay is as a character, and not just the surface level
I've been saying that for actual years.
The stereotype of who Jay is.
Yeah, the last one he was in before he disappeared because Whit had to leave was the Pinocchio two-parter, which I remember arguing that there was even a lot of like Jay characterization just through how he portrayed Pinocchio in that. But Groundhog Jay, my favorite Jay episode is
30 Jay's Half September. Is that second?
30 Jay's Half September is probably my second favorite in terms of his portrayal.
Yeah,
I really
forgot
need
about
to
Groundhog Jay.
re-listen to that ending scene. Groundhog Jay, in my opinion, is a perfect episode. I've listened to it so many times. I haven't heard it in actual years, so I really need to re-listen to it. Especially the end of 30 Days Half September. I forgot about that. It's so good. That's like the only episode that's given us like any pure Jay content where he's just by himself.
Yeah, with no other, like, all the walls are gone, all the facade.
And it's like the best moment of him in the entire series. And I just need I need more moments like that. I need more Jay episodes where he's the main character, because we haven't gotten one of those in a very long time. Even the New Zealand 3-parter wasn't really focused on him.
You know what I'd like to see is Mori and Suzu and Jay.
Yes. I would definitely like to see that too. I don't know if we'll get that.
I don't know if we'll get it, but I would like it.
I feel like Jay would just be confused. I feel like he wouldn't be able to keep up with what's going on.
So what if he outsmarted them, but in a very Elle Woods it's hard way without realizing it? And they're just
okay. Him doing it without realizing it could happen. And they're like, how did you figure out the launch codes? He's like, what do you mean? I thought this was a phone number or something like that.
Anyways, so Jay, excellent in this episode. And then also the stuff with Bridget and just the really heavy emphasis on understanding the importance of recognizing trauma and addressing trauma and how it can affect you from events without you even realizing it, and how it's easy to underestimate how affected you are by something and realize it's fine, but there is actually a lot of underlying stuff, and that's why it's important to seek out therapy and dig into these things and fix them, because you might not realize how much it's affecting you until something critical happens and then you're drowning. and that was really good. It was an excellent theme, and I was very appreciative of that.
Can we just
I'm gonna say
Younger wrote this,
yeah,
right?
4.8 out of 5. I'm giving this one.
Can just like Marshall Younger only write Jay from now on, please?
Have we finally found like, because I feel like Marshall is the most regular writer that in my mind I've never like really pegged down specifically like what is his like specialty or his like
give me a minute.
keynote.
I'm gonna look up what his no, that's the OAC website. I'm gonna look up what some of his other episodes have been real quick. Because I feel like each like writer has this like niche. I'd agree with you. Like with
and
Phil,
I've always struggled to think of what it is for Marshall.
Because like with Phil, it's like all the like combination of like calling back on like old stuff, and then also like
There's lots of
approaching like
plot
broad,
heavy or serious
complex
stuff,
topics that are like can be controversial or something like that. With Kathy, we have like all of the more like emotional relationship based stuff, whether
really
that be
good
like
character
interpersonal
development
or interpersonal relationships that are like familial or romantic or platonic or something like that, which she does really well.
Yeah, and
then
comedy,
with
especially combining comedy with interpersonal relationship development.
Yeah, and then with Nathan, it's like callbacks on old stuff.
Yeah,
and
doing
then just
really plot heavy in terms of like relating to stuff that happened before and tying in really well with like the canon of the show from the past.
And then with Bob, it's just he's there and he's probably
a boat captain saving someone.
Let me see. Here, if you wanna, I'll send you the page too. If you want to take it.
Yeah, you talk about your rating for the episode.
Okay. Lots of Novacom.
Yeah, like I said, he's written a lot. I mean, that's, when he...
That's kind of funny. It's like lots of stuff, 16, like early that area, and then tons of Novacom.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I'm looking at like 23, 24, 26, 27, like 29, 31, like that whole era. It's pretty consistent. 32, 33, Ooh. 34, and then
okay. Look at this stuff under 8.
I mean, it's bottom. Fair. He did. I mean, he wrote Plan B, although I think Plan B was written by a lot of different people.
I think Plan B was like everyone.
Yeah, I feel like that's
lots
the
of
thing
Novacom was everyone.
Lots of these Novacom episodes were written by a bunch of people.
But like, look at the bottom. Basically, all the Wyatt and Bridget episodes have been written by him.
At least Plan B Part 1, it just says written by Marshall.
But like, look at he's written like basically all the Wyatt and Bridget stuff. At the very bottom of the page.
Yeah, Jumping Off, Jumping In, Unrelatable, Teach a Man.
Like Man of the House, Bridget Redefined.
Always Home.
Sandwich Initiative, which was Wyatt's first episode, I believe.
And Camp in a Hard Place. Those are both Wyatt episodes. Yeah, so he's been pretty much like the whole Perkins thing, and in the future I'm seeing Hurricane Perkins as well.
It's like Holy Hoopster Bible Network for $3 more. He wrote like all my favorite episodes in that album.
30 J's.
In the Perfect Church. He wrote 30 J's has to Devin, we found him. We found my J writer. Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy. Wait, yes. Devin, we can work with this. We can work with this. Devin. I'm looking up who wrote, no, wait. Who wrote Groundhog Day?
Yeah, I was trying to think of the name. I was going to say Eternal Birthday, but that's the other.
Who wrote this one? It was written by Bob Hoose and Dave Arnold. Which I don't know if we've ever put, like, writing.
For Dave, I have.
Stuff on them.
Dave is my favorite author to address complex topics personally.
He hasn't written very many. He's only written 30. He wrote Pinocchio and 30 Days Past September, The Launch.
He wrote The Cure.
Groundhog Day. Oh, they collabed. Devin, I found my 2 J boys. Devin. He wrote There and Back Again.
Yep.
And, oh, dude, I found the two people who I am giving, like, my blessing, my absolute blessing for how they characterize and write
I feel
Jay.
like Phil, like you were saying, Phil takes most of the writing when it comes to like complex topics, but personally, Dave Arnold is my favorite writer to cover those topics after things like There and Back Again or The Cure, where we're talking about themes like drug addiction and suicide and racism and like gaslighting and abusive relationships and stuff like that. I feel like Dave is the one who captures those themes frequently.
Yeah,
like,
Dave's only written 30 episodes, but like they're all such bangers. And then there's also Grandma's Christmas Visit on here and the Malted Milk Ball Falcon. But like all the other ones, like
what was the last one you said?
The Malted Milk Ball Falcon.
Ah.
He wrote Solitary Refinement. And then he didn't write another episode until the Jubilee Singers. Like, that is such a big gap.
That is a big gap, but I would like to say Solitary Refinement and Jubilee Singers are like two of my top 20 episodes probably in the entire show.
Oh my gosh, the list. This list is full of such bangers. Like David Arnold.
I told you, I really...
You're so right. David Arnold's barely written any episodes in the grand scheme of things, but the ones he writes are so good. Like, listen to this list.
Well, like, I remember, too, he's also been the executive producer of the show for the last,
that is very true.
a long time. Like, he knows the show. He's the showrunner and has been for
this
quite a while.
episode's just turned into Dave Arnold appreciation hours. Just, I guess, like, writer appreciation. So, like, Solitary Refinement, Jubilee Singers, A Thanks-Taking Story, which is, like, Malted Milk Ball Falcon, Grandma's Christmas Visit, The Amazing Loser. I barely even remember what that one's about. Sergeant York.
It's a J episode.
Is it?
Yeah, because they're having the band, the concert band.
Right. That one's
scavenger hunt.
First, like, Barrett, Priscilla J episode, where it all began.
It is, yeah.
He's the one.
Where it all began.
He's the one who gifted me with their
Christmas
relationship, and then it was taken away too soon. Sergeant York, which I love. Groundhog J, which we've talked about. The Launch, really good. 30 Days Hath September. That last scene, though. The Cure. Pinocchio, The Journal of John Avery Whitaker, which that one must have been a collab, I'm thinking, between him and some other people. Where does it show the writers on this?
On the episode, you have to switch to the crew tab on the info bar.
Oh, thank you.
There's like, yeah.
It was directed by Phil, but written by Dave. Which, that sounds right. When One Door Closes, I don't remember. Is that one a station?
That's the Middle East one.
Okay, so that one's a club. I think that was an early club episode. There and Back Again, the 30th birthday live show, which I can only assume was literally every writer. I'm not going to check in case I'm wrong, because that was a thing that existed.
I'm going to assume it was every writer, but they all wrote their individual segments and put them on this on the music stands at the end without ever having communicated with each other or shown the scripts
Phil,
to anyone.
Paul, and Dave, and directed by Phil and Nathan. And then basically there's like...
I think Paul's thing would have just been the fact that they reused...
There's like credits for almost
Young Guns
every
Bonanza.
Single person except for Kathy on this list.
And it shows.
And then Rumpelstiltskin is the last episode he wrote, which I remember complimenting that one a lot for how it like portrayed the characters and the Miller's daughter especially. Yeah. It's like, oh my gosh, Dave, I've never appreciated you to the point where I should have, because I usually never really look up like what specific authors or like specific writers have done until I feel prompted. But yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
so what's your rating for this episode?
Stars, yeah.
Okay.
Big tangent. But usually our tangents are not about Odyssey things.
This was one of our more relevant tangents.
Yeah, this was like our most productive tangent that we've ever had.
Yeah. So, now we are going to talk about Christmas bells.
Okay, we're continuing this conversation we just started having off camera. I'm just going through it with these writers and Jay's character. I'm just so desperate for any positive things from Jay at this point, because there's been so much negative stuff ever since, like, basically ever since Vance started disappearing more as a character. I like how
as soon as
I was done talking about Jay, but no, you sucked me back in, because during our little mini break
I sucked you back in.
You were like, hey,
you sucked yourself
we
back
haven't
in.
done enough of? We haven't talked about Jay enough.
That's definitely what I said.
Something I've never heard you say ever. So now we're talking about Jay. That was
a direct quote from me. I like how as soon as the camera came back on, though, it turned away from the very comedic turn of words around that you had, which I really appreciate, and I don't even know if you did, where I was, like, talking about how you, like...
No, like, yeah, that was on purpose.
It was very good. Because I was
repeat what you said.
Victoria was like, I keep on rehashing all of, like, the episodes each time we bring it up, and I, like, go.
Yeah,
I was
Devin
like, yeah, you keep on going through it, and yeah, Victoria's like, yeah, I am going through it.
Devin was saying maybe we should do an episode where we look at Jay's character and how it's progressed, and then we go through the episodes, and he said, like, going through it, and I was like, yeah, I am going through it. Every single time Jay appears, I'm just constantly just going through it, praying that Jay will get more positive characterization, but it only happens 15% of the time, and the rest is just suffering. My whole life, it's just suffering for Jay's character.
And when you Jay, that's another episode title that we could do.
I need more Jay pun titles.
I'm Jaying for a sign.
Devin, I just need him. I need him.
A long Jay's night.
That's the end of that sentence. But two, I just need him to be the protagonist in more episodes. So
one Jay more.
I need more pun titles with Jillian's name in the... I need pun titles with Jillian's name. I need pun titles with Jay's name, and I need them with Maury's name.
Okay, so Jay is doing whatever, something being annoying to someone or something not realize, and the way it's pointing out, like, you don't realize sometimes, like, the impact that the way that you treat someone can, like, have on them from their perspective, and so he puts Jay in a room of consequence, where there's another Jay there, and he has to, like, try and get along with himself, and it goes terrible in, like, a car cat memo kind of way, and it's called One Jay More.
How about we have an episode where Jay's going... We have an episode, this is such a dumb bit, we have an episode where, and the fact that we've done this bit, like, this same kind of vibe, like, 5 years ago, and now we're just doing it again, we don't
No, come on, tell me.
Okay, Jay's just having a really rough time, and so he decides to get a new hobby or something like that, and surprise, it's career day again, because they didn't just have it with the casket people. They're called funeral directors. I forgot what they were called.
Yeah.
and he's having a rough time, and then he gets looked after by this bird watcher, and it's called Blue Jay, and it's about cheering him up, which I knew it was bad going into it, but I couldn't come up with a better one because I couldn't think of anything.
Jay receiving bad news and trying to work through the denial of trying to, like, push it out and not accept it. Jay, it ain't so. Jay, it jain't so. We could go all Jay with these.
I hate you. I hate you.
I think we've literally made the joke about what Jay something I'm giving up on you would be. I feel like so. I've literally said the plot of that exact episode before.
We've also done Jay in the Life.
Yeah.
But realized that one wouldn't work because we already have that one basically as a title.
So, anyways, Christmas Bells.
That's our cold open to the Christmas Bells review.
Yeah, episode 905 written by Phil. Sorry, we needed to inject some comedy into this episode about a bunch of people dying, including one burning to death.
Oh my gosh. Yep, ready to talk about that sound, that acting in
Yeah.
that bit.
Yeah.
Dude, that was, oh my gosh. That was awful.
The second time it was
listen
worse
to.
because I knew that she was going to die from it.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really think she'd survive it when I was listening to it.
I mean,
but...
I guess because we knew bad things were going to happen, it was like, clearly this is going to be bad. Generally, if it's like, oh, I have people to help me put it out and my dress caught on fire just from like a match at the corner and I noticed it right away, I wouldn't expect someone to die from that.
You know what I thought this episode was going to be like? I thought it was going to be like, this guy's just going through it, like, having a real rough time because he lost his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And then he, like, found a new, like, woman he liked. And then they got together and they had kids. And I thought it was, like, them, like, going to be them, like, slowly healing. And, yeah, like, rediscovering joy. And it was going to be beautiful. And it was just like... No, man.
No, this is Horatio G. Spafford, too.
Yeah. Electric, too.
Yeah, it's literally like It Is Well, but a different guy.
It Is Well, but it's called It Ain't Well, because just everything bad is happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. It's just like, here's the guy, and his life was fine, but then it wasn't. I don't remember who lived first, because... Longfellow wasn't mentioned in like hymn writers or Spafford. So I know they were about the same time in history, and obviously we've heard of Longfellow before because he wrote Paul Revere's Midnight Ride, and so Witt says his name a lot in album 14 in the Midnight Ride when he's talking about all these different historical inaccuracies that Longfellow put into his poem.
But see, I thought that no, I can't remember what I was thinking. I think one of the things I was going to say is like...
Anyways, what happened?
Oh, I remember. Real quick, sorry.
Yeah.
And then we'll do the summary. This is a lot like It Is Well. It's also going over a song and just like why it was written and stuff like that, and just showing like how the different like stanzas of the song
or about how someone's life was good and then really, really, really bad.
And then just got worse before it was just like little upturn of hope at the end, basically. Except for like, whereas It Is Well, I don't really like that song a whole lot. I actually do like this song.
I really like this Christmas Carol. It is vastly underappreciated.
It is.
And I was
when they were singing it, I was just like, oh, I barely ever hear that Christmas Carol. It's a really pretty song.
Zoe had a very, like, a very average line for most people, I think, when she was like, oh, it's that Christmas Carol. And they're like, do you know the words? And she was like, nope.
Like, I did not realize it had this many verses, but I can say that about
did
like
just because it's a Christmas Carol. Yeah, I was like, every Christmas Carol has at least 7 verses.
Yeah,
and if
like
I know anything about Longfellow, it's that he lived up to his name when it came to word count.
It's like Victor Hugo or something like that, where it's like paid by how much you write. But this is one of those songs where I'm not really surprised that it's crazy long but I was surprised by like how long it is.
I was surprised that it was so like autobiographical in nature.
Yeah, same. So like lots of
I definitely hadn't heard the
songs.
verses about like cannons thundering from the south and all the things that are very clearly not about Christmas.
Yeah, I was about to get into that. So like old Christmas songs and lots of old hymns and lots of old Christmas songs you find in hymnals, depending on what they are, have like a ridiculous amount of verses and stuff like that. So
a ridiculous amount of verses that are extremely high with 0 rests in them, which I know because I play them all on the trumpet, which makes them very difficult to play. And I would always say, because in December it would be like the Christmas service just become brutal with how high and how many verses are. And like I said, the fact that there are no rests, and literally you can look at hymnals of some of these old Christmas carols and there isn't even an 8th rest to be found in the whole thing. And I would always make the joke of like, I think when they wrote these hymns, they considered that putting rests in the music was a form of sloth. And so they're like, we can't let people know we breathe.
You just have to work on your circular breathing.
Apparently.
But there are certain Christmas songs where it's just like, oh, I only knew about like 2 or 3 of these verses in this song, and it turns out they have like 8.
Yeah.
And then for some of those songs, you're like, okay, the reason why they took out all these verses is because like the song is just like, it takes 20 minutes to sing otherwise, or something like that. And which is kind of unfortunate.
And yet we still sing the 12 Days of Christmas. So when you think about it.
You know what? I don't think I've ever said this on this podcast before. I hate that song. Every time I see a parody of that song, you know what I do? I skip to the very end so I can see what all the jokes are.
Obviously.
And then I exit that video as soon as possible so I can get the song out of my head.
It is funny. I've never thought about before the fact that we sing through every single verse of that song, and yet every other Christmas song that has tons of verses, we only sing a couple verses when they don't repeat themselves all the time.
Yeah. Like, we can both agree on this, right? The 12 Days of Christmas sucks.
I enjoy singing it just because usually when I'm singing it, it's in like a communal setting where we're all kind of like having fun with it, and it's kind of like we're having fun off of each other.
No,
but it's not
I'm
the song
sick
itself
of
that
song.
makes it fun. And doing the Miss Piggy like ba-dum-bum-bum.
The only good part is 5 golden rings.
Exactly,
because that's the only part that, like, melodically is different, basically.
Yeah.
So, but, like, with this song, I was just like, oh, the reason why they cut out all those verses is because, wow, are they sad and have nothing to do with Christmas and are very sad. There's, like, one verse where she's like, I've lost like, all hope in God.
Then maybe...
And I was like, oh, no.
It is, you know what? It's valid. Also, I think most of those verses, it's just, they're not as catchy or pithy or use even more words that people don't know what they mean anymore because the words haven't been used colloquially or generally in the English language since the 1800s is probably the reason most of the time. I mean, we already keep verses that's like, you know, hail the incarnate, like the God flesh see, hail the incarnate deity and stuff like that, or veiled in flesh, the Godhead see. If we can keep in verses like that, we can keep in most extra verses from other Christmas carols. That's okay. There's our hot Christmas carol take for the day.
On record and say it. My other hot take of the day. People can be really wimpish about learning new words in old songs and replacing them with like other words, just because the other words are easier to say or you know what they mean better. Like learn a new word. Go on dictionary.com. And
wait, are you saying people should be better at learning old words, or they should be better at replacing the old words with new words that they...
No, I think they should be better at learning what old words are. Because it never hurts to learn what some new words are.
Yeah.
There's some really cool old words that, like, so many people don't know.
Yeah.
I can't really think of any at the moment.
Riven, that's a one that never gets used. Riven 20 Riventine. Let's all appreciate the Riven.
Riven is a great word. I love the word Riven.
It's used in a classic Christmas carol.
Riven is used in a lot of cool stuff. Whenever the word Riven is used, it's always in a cool way. I've never seen that word, because people know that Riven is such a cool word.
And an excellent video game.
They have to go in, because if they're not going to go fully in, they might as well use a different word.
Yeah.
Like
Torn,
that word goes
ripped.
hard. It goes too hard.
Yes.
To like just use it passively.
Similar word, rot, as in WROUGHT, because I always think of what hath science wrought.
We're just, you know, we're just appreciating things today.
Yeah.
This is nice. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, it's a nice episode of positivity. We should record this early in the morning more often.
we need to record, more early in the morning.
We always do it when we're so tired and hungry at night.
We're apparently a lot more cheerful in the morning. We just have better vibes.
Yeah, because if these are the cheery vibes that we can bring into this episode, then we can do anything.
Yeah, we're unstoppable now. Do you just want to start recording Monday mornings, I guess?
Apparently. Anyways, what happens in this cheery episodes, Victoria?
In this episode, everyone dies or gets their legs broken.
And then we find out one of the kids in Odyssey is going to die soon.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
The most important part that was the only part you remembered, and then you forgot it.
Yeah, so, I almost just said Horatio Spafford.
Wilson.
Neville Longbottom, that's who this episode's about.
Uh,
What's his name again?
Henry Wadsworth Longfellow.
Thank you. So,
I thought you were going to say Wilson, like, to begin the episode.
So, at the beginning of this episode, Wilson goes into Triple J's and is talking to Jason.
Oh, I also had the thought, though, it's called Triple J's. So I said one of the three will fall. What if it's one of the three J's? And
that would be pretty cheap, honestly.
No, I don't mean on the sign. I mean Jack, Joanne, and Jason.
Yeah, I know, but like 2 of them are never coming back anyway.
I know.
So it doesn't have
Jason.
It doesn't have any relevance.
Jason's gonna fall off
Jason.
the roof while he's fixing a loose tile. Anyways.
So, also I was kind of hoping for Jillian because we were already in the antique shop. Probably would have ruined the vibes of this episode if Jillian was there. But what?
Jillian would have been so good in this episode. Oh my goodness.
I know. Could you just imagine, like, it just hard cutting from, like, the wife burning on fire to just Jillian walking in the room, and she's like, I came in at the wrong part of this conversation, and then she just leaves.
That's the only line she has in the episode, and then she goes into the fire. It's so good!
That is what we needed. That probably would have just thrown off the entire vibes.
Oh,
and
Victoria, that would have been
not have been what they were looking for, but that would have been so funny.
That would have been so funny. And also the fact that Jillian's just been like hiding. Like she was like, oh, I heard Wilson coming in, you were having this conversation, and I didn't want to say anything, but then I decided to come out and it was the wrong time. And so you know what? I'm just gonna go into the back room. Zoe, it was nice seeing you. Goodbye.
I'm just thinking, like, could you imagine if she was just in the background room, like cataloging or something that? Or just like figuring out like a template for the website on her laptop or something that. And was just like listening, and then every now and then she was like
having just like a Titus Andromedon face
and
journey.
Just completely silently just like reacting and not saying anything.
The only downside to that happening would be the lack of visual element of like, the comedy.
And then at the end, when they're just like, someone will fall, she's just like, closes the laptop. She's like, I'm going home for the day. And then just puts it in her bag and just silently walks out. So you just like, just the whole episode, you just see like Jillian sitting at the counter in the back, just not saying anything because she has her earbuds in, but she like turned him off to say hi when Wilson came in, but Wilson was being all cryptic, and she's like, I'll just wait for him to finish talking to Jason. So everyone thinks that like she can't hear them, and she's just listening for the whole thing, just like sitting there just having a crisis.
And you forget, they like show her at the beginning, so you see like, oh, she's listening, but that's why she didn't say anything. And then they don't show her for the rest of the episode, so you forget she's there. And then at the end, and she's just like,
yeah, and then at the end, when Wilson's just like, one of them will fall, she just closes her computer and puts it in her bag and just wordlessly like walks out of the store. I love the idea that it's just like Wilson.
I have a new headcanon for this episode that like, really adds a lot of levity to the plot.
Just like, it's like a camera on Wilson, just like a close-up on him, or like a wide lens of him. And then it just like would cut to Zoe and Jason every now and then. And then every now and then it would just have like a wider shot where you can just see Jillian just like a little bit behind Jason, just like, oh my gosh, in the background. And it just shows her like once every 5 minutes or something like that, just like with a new expression. You see her for like a full 20 seconds go through the 5 stages of grief, and it's just amazing.
Oh.
Dude, we're so good in the morning. It's
so good.
The vibes are immaculate.
As soon as you said Jillian, I was thinking like, oh, that's funny because Jillian would have been like such a terrible thing to have here in terms of like how she would have like ruined the mood of this very serious plot. But then as soon as you were like, yeah, and then his wife burnt to death in her dress as he tried to like beat the fire out of her. And then Jillian just like walking in at that moment and then just like beep, 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 and like backing out and close the door.
I just like to think that like I will die on this hill. Jillian was there in the building.
Yeah, I know. I'm definitely headcanoning now.
Either she was just completely quiet, just freaking out in the background for the whole episode, or she did walk in at that moment. And then she just silently walked back out of
it's like Lindsay Jones before has said like, they'll come into a room and then like something awkward's happening or they say something awkward and they'll just like back out of the door and talk backwards and be like and just like back out and close the door.
But yeah, I think I found the perfect way for us to glean enjoyment from this episode. Now I kind of want to listen to it again.
From any episode is just add more Jillian to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's very good. That's extremely powerful. So anyways,
Jillian makes every episode better, even through not saying anything.
Fact. What happens in this episode?
So Wilson comes in, talks to Jason, says he needs to talk to him about something, is kind of vague about like what's going on, enough so that you kind of forget like why Wilson came in the first place.
Well, I mean,
by the time you get to the end of the episode.
He says it at the beginning.
Well, he says like he felt like he needed to talk to Jason.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like, oh, I'm vagging at you right now, because he didn't.
No,
he led us to believe that he had said everything by the beginning of the episode, and he didn't know anything else. And then, he was like, by the way, I didn't tell you this other thing.
He's like, by the way, I left out this huge thing about child slaughter. And then you're like, I'm sorry, what? And he's like, have a nice day, like, nephew. And then he leaves, and the episode ends, and you're just sitting there, and you're like, what? And then Chris is like, well, everyone. And you're like, Chris, stop.
I always forget he's his actual uncle, because I just, because he would say Uncle Jack when Jack first came, so in my mind he just calls him Uncle Willie, because and I always forget he is actually
when I just said nephew
his
there,
aunt.
I had a second where I was just like, oh my gosh.
The exact same thing when you said nephew, and I was like,
yeah.
Oh yeah, he is actually his actual nephew too.
It's just nice. Honestly.
I always forget he's his brother-in-law.
It's nice.
It's nice for Wit to have more family.
Yeah. I'm not opposed to that. More family for Wit to just be on terms with. Sometimes not even that.
Yeah. It's like, oh, but he has such a good relationship with Wilson. Yeah, after not talking to him for 70 years.
Does he, though? So, someone says, like, he has a good relationship with Wilson. Like, yeah, today he does.
Yeah, he didn't. It's like, yeah, he did after Wilson came back to Odyssey after not talking to Wit in person for 70 years.
So...
Wit really do be like, I will bottle up these... He really is Scottish, though. Like, I will bottle up these emotions inside myself, and then one day I'll die. Except he doesn't die.
So he just always bottles them. Does Connie even know about Charlotte?
Well, I guess
yeah, exactly.
Wit was like, oh yeah, he married my sister, and Connie's like, excuse me?
Yeah.
At the end of his introduction episode, but does she know the rest of that? Renee was the one who was there in
I don't
Charlotte.
think she does. I don't think Eugene does either. I want them to confirm on the show that, like, Connie and Eugene know about this stuff.
That Wit had a sister, period?
Yeah, and that he had, like, an awful... Well, I guess Connie already knows about the bad relationship with Wilson, but I want just Connie and Eugene to know everything that Renee knows, because I feel like it's unfair.
Uh-huh. It's
but,
like, you are my secret favorite because you are Scottish.
Pretty much. He's like, you're Scottish, so you can know about the emotions because you are
allowed by birthright to know my secrets.
Okay, so he comes in.
You know what it is? Sorry, it's like how people
we're never gonna get through this.
It's always like people are like, I'm so emotionally closed off IRL, but they'll go online and be like, info dump all of my trauma onto everyone, because it's like, I don't know in real life, so I can tell you all these things. It's like, Renee, you're Scottish and you're not real, so I can tell you all of my secrets because you don't matter in real life.
What's imaginary friend Renee? Oh, so sad.
His therapy imaginary friend.
If it were for the fact that Renee was in so many episodes,
I was gonna say,
it would probably be like a Fairy Tale Zero thing. Where I was about
to say, can we?
She's not real.
We could do an episode on that. If we look back, is it plausible that Renee only exists in Wit's head.
Renee was bike riding in the park in the canon albums. That is the only thing that makes her a real human being.
But that could be actual René Descartes, actual 18th century French philosopher and mathematician who was biking
also
through
doesn't
McAllister
die.
Park. Anyway.
Do you think Renee's a robot? No, she's family. Wait, who else met her family? Was it only Wit? Was it only Wit that met her aunt?
I mean, her dog is already a computer, so...
Also, we've never gotten anything else about that. Remember how that was going to be a thing?
Yeah, I was just
And
realizing
like,
that. We've never heard from her computer dog again. Maybe she deleted him to, like, let go.
No, I don't think so. Do you think they just forgot?
That's more likely that they just haven't found a natural way to work it in. Renee's always at wit's end. We don't see her at her home talking to her computer.
I got the
anymore.
vibe that, like, the dog was going to play into the storyline if she became a Christian in some way.
Uh-huh. Maybe they just thought it would be weird for her to always be talking to, like, on her phone, and she's just like, what do you think, Cogito? And everyone would be like, why is Renee always talking to her Tamagotchi all the time? So...
It's because...
I understand why it hasn't come up again.
Yeah, I guess. So Zoe comes in to the store.
Uh-huh. We've made it to minute 2 of the episode.
26 and a half minutes in, Zoe comes into the store, which is the equivalent of 1 minute into the episode. So we're doing pretty good, folks. If we didn't shave off the first 4.5 minutes where we talked about Jay. I don't even remember why Zoe comes in. Is it for the newspaper?
Yeah, she just wanted Jason to give her an idea. She had a history paper and a newspaper article to write, and she didn't have ideas for either.
Okay. And then, like, Wilson's already about to talk about, like, that story to Jason because he finds, like, an old music box.
Well, Jason was the one who knew the story. Wilson didn't.
Right. And so then they go through the whole story. And I guess Jillian rethinks about how much she's paid at the job in the background or something like that, and all for benefits.
How much can I sell my plasma for again?
Oh, Jillian. So
it's like, he's cute, but isn't worth it.
I mean, Jason is very cute, so kind of worth it. As long as he doesn't go back into the spy business. He's been doing good recently.
Jillian, respect yourself. Don't let him do it.
Jillian will become a spy sooner than Jason does.
Yeah, again, I mean, we've had that conversation.
And I support her. I support Jillian in all of her endeavors.
Yeah.
She's very good. What's the guy's name again?
Longfellow.
Okay. So
Wadsworth is a great middle name, by the way. I think we should bring that back personally, which is the main takeaway from this episode, besides the Jillian thing and everything else that we talked about in the first 27 minutes of this episode review that was not the episode.
There is a YA book series that's 4 books long that I really enjoyed that was kind of like inspired by Sherlock Holmes that just finished last year, and the main character's last name was Wadsworth.
Well, there you go.
So it is used in something that was quite a popular book series. If that makes you feel any better.
It makes me feel so much better anyways.
Yes. I can tell. So, Longfellow is married to this woman, and they're really cute, and they really love each other, and then she dies, and then he's really sad, and basically each
But no,
stage
not
of
that
his
one.
life,
We're talking about the earlier one.
Each stage of his life is, like, described through a stanza, or not even a stanza, just, like, a verse.
Yes. Here's the verse
song.
about my wife dying tragically. Here's the next verse about my next wife dying tragically.
Yeah, he meets another wife, and then the next verse is just like, oh, spring, happiness, because he meets a new woman, they fall in love, and then they have kids.
And then she burns to death in the kitchen.
She sets on fire and dies in front of their daughter.
In front of my toddler daughter. I can see why we don't sing all the verses of this particular Christmas carol.
Yeah, it's really gruesome and grim.
And then the Civil War started, and my son got paralyzed.
And then his other kids die.
And then
everything is
died.
there's like a bunch of bad verses about sadness, and he only has one kid left, his son, who goes into war, and then all of his verses are about war and how bad war is.
I mean, one of the few verses
And
we
then,
do keep is the one where it's like, there is no peace on earth, I said. And like, yeah, I
Yeah.
really do feel that one now that I understand the context for the writing of this song.
that one hit hard.
And also just kind of, yeah, now recording this episode in the second week of January 2021.
I'm trying to have a more positive outlook on this year than last year, because I need more good vibes this year after last year.
Anyways,
today,
back
Devin,
to...
today's about being positive. We're being positive in this episode while we talk about people burning to death.
10 a.m. recording, everything's good.
10 a.m. recording, positivity. So he comes back from war, paralyzed. and all the verses get sad again. Sadder, if you can believe it. And then they pray. And then they pray, and then he's unparalyzed, and then the verses end.
And
the song is happy. The song has a happy ending. And then, so he's just like, wow, that was a lot to take in. And Jillian runs out through the back door, already typing up her 2 weeks notice.
I never realized how much this song generally, like if you cut out the first and last verses, isn't about Christmas. Like, because I mean, the last line of every verse is repeated, and like the phrase peace on earth, goodwill to men obviously does have the Christmas connotations because it comes from the angels visiting the shepherds.
Oh, dude, do we have to add this to our non-Christmas song list?
Well, no, it is a Christmas song, but I mean...
It's like the Die Hard of Christmas songs.
Apart from the first and last lines, like I never realized that even though the song does use repetition through all the verses, it doesn't actually mention Christmas in any of the other verses. And like I said, the repeated line is technically Christmas associated because it comes from the Christmas story in Luke, but it's not the rest of the song. The song isn't inherently about Christmas. The only Christmas aspect of it is the very final day of it when his son B was unparalyzed, and none of the rest of this song took place on or it was relating to Christmas at all.
And so, yeah, and then Zoe's like, wow, I'm gonna write on this. And then she leaves, and she's writing the paper. We find out it's like a group assignment paper. Mm-hmm. And she's writing it with, I believe, Olivia's the other person.
And Emily, yeah.
And Emily. And then she runs out, and then Wilson's
she just
kind of
by
happenstance
happens to mention, like, by the way, I'm working on this with 2 other people. Goodbye.
And then you think the episode's about to end because there's like 1 minute left.
Yeah,
and
I think so.
Like, well, that was a very dry episode. There wasn't really anything like that. Odd that it was in an album and not an OAC.
It felt very much like an OAC episode. But wait, there's
more. It
more.
felt so much like an OAC episode. And then you said Phil wrote this?
Yes.
Yeah, and then Phil's just like Devin and I are like, it's like a Marvel movie. Like we're already like getting up out of our seats because it's like those people who go to see Marvel movies
and don't stay for the post-credits.
Like immediately when the credits start rolling because they haven't learned anything in the past over a decade. Uh-huh. And then Phil's just like pushing him back down. He's like, stay back down. And we're like, what do you mean, Phil? And then Wilson opens his gob, and he's just like, wait, did she say she's working in this as a group of 3? Jason, I forgot to tell you, I came here because I felt like in my soul there was this thing that was just like one of the 3 will fall. And then Devin and I are just sitting there and we're like, oh, that's why it's an album episode.
Well, I was just like,
yeah, it basically,
well, that was a turn.
Punch. It comes so out of the blue, and it's literally within the last
at
minute.
The 11th hour and 59th minute and 57th second, yeah.
Like it comes so out of the blue. It's, oh my goodness.
And it really is funny how Wilson's like, I mean, I just thought that I was having a divine warning that, like, something was going to fall off a shelf or something. You were going to drop a book. But now I think maybe it was for something more important than that. And
then Jason's just standing there. He's like, should we be worried about this? And Wilson's like, probably. And then the episode ends. And so, like, Devin,
it's like
I basically,
in the Maury saga, he's like, I'm having these divine revelations. I know for a personal fact that Mori is trying to kill
It
children.
felt so much like Wit in the Mori saga, where it's just like, should we be worried? It was like, nah, let's just sit back and watch fam. And I was like, no, we already did this before with Emily.
Even more than that,
so
it was so extremely Jack. And I feel like that's why Jason took it as passively as he did, because it was so very Jack in album like
Wilson's
24
basically Jack.
And 25. Like, to come in and be like, I just had like, I had this divine revelation of this thing. I'm going to go tell Jason about it. And then Jason's like, yeah, this is normal at this point. Like, Jack beat me down on these things so much at this point.
Of Jason's life is just like, adult life is already so weird.
I genuinely do think that like Jason would have had more of a reaction to it way back once upon a time. Before,
he's just been desensitized by living with Jack.
And then Malachi's message happened. Is like, sometimes you just get teleported into the middle of a lake, and he's like, at this point, he was like, that's life.
And Wilson's like, are you good, dude? And Jason's like, I was the fish that was thrown back. And then he walks into the back room.
And direct all the way to Trickle Lake and directly off the dock, face first into the water.
And yeah, so I remember going up to Devin, I think like the next day or something like that. And I was like, so, did you listen to the episode? And Devin was like, I did. And then I was like, so the last minute, huh? And Devin was like,
These conversations are always so much more fun also when we're in the same place in person. So we can all just kind of have like those casual looks at each other instead of just like messaging each other about it.
We have this rule where we're not really allowed to talk about the episodes off camera, and so when I want to talk about the episodes off camera, because there's just something I need to get on my system, the conversations are mostly silent, which is an amazing experience of just kind of bewildered looks that we share with each other.
It's a lot of face journeying,
and just a lot of 1 or 2 word sentences, and we're like, so Wilson,
it's like,
and then the other person's like, yep, and we're like, Emily death? And we're like, yes, Emily death.
Maybe so.
So I think we can both agree it's Emily.
I mean, it makes the most sense that it's relating to Emily and Maury, especially if they're trying to move the Parkers and probably by extension Emily, like on the out path. If they are on an effluent trajectory of the series, and then also Emily is working through all the stuff going on with Maury, it would have been extremely more ominous if this had happened before the Rydell revelations.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm more worried now that it's happening after the Rydell revelations.
Yeah, because it's like, what else is going to happen?
What else can you do to her? She's already in such a bad place mentally.
Let her live.
Let her be happy.
Leave Emily alone.
I feel like I'm gonna make an argument for all 3 cases, for all 3 girls. Zoe, it's not Zoe. Olivia, it would be like.
What if it's Zoe falling for Jay?
They no. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. If Zoe falls for Jay, which won't happen, then yes, girl, get some help. I love Jay. You can do so much better.
That would take divine intervention to predict that happening.
Oh, no. So, Olivia, like you said, I did make the argument when we talked briefly back during Christmas holidays that the only case I could see it being Olivia is if it's an excuse just to get the Parkers, like, out of Odyssey.
I mean, I'll say this. I don't think it's a death.
I don't think it's a death either.
I just want to make that clear.
We're just being dramatic.
That is for comedic dramedy effect.
Yeah. So I think it's like a 95% chance, actually like 98, that it's
not death.
It's Emily.
Oh. Yeah.
No.
I'll say I think it's
fall.
I'll say 85% chance that it's Emily.
I
think it could just be they're finally going to give Zoe or Olivia like their own kind of storyline to do something for once.
I feel like all characters who write for newspapers in Odyssey
are doomed to be always the bridesmaid but never the bride.
To just like be in the background and never have any plot stuff going on.
Uh-huh.
Just their whole character is,
I mean,
I'm going to learn
Lucy had
this fact
Richard
because
and then Darkness Before
newspaper.
Dawn. That's kind of something.
Lucy's
And
the only one
Mandy
who's able to
had
break
her-
out of it.
the parent
Oh, I guess
divorce.
Mandy also had a... Okay. Well, okay,
But
then I
will
guess
say,
Zoe's
in
the only one who
context
hasn't
of
had a...
how long Lucy was around, she had no overarching plot stuff compared to how long she was a main character of the show.
I mean, like, okay, I'll say most of the time when there's a writer character, it takes a long time for them to, like, get plot stuff, and most of the time when they show up, it's just because, like, oh, I'm gonna write this thing, which, very evident with Lucy, semi-evident with Mandy, gratuitous with Zoe.
I would say more gratuitous with Lucy than anyone, because Lucy was on the show for, like, from album 2 until album 29. Or 28.
Yeah, but the thing with Lucy
28.
is that she was always in episodes where it didn't have to be mentioned that she was a writer.
That's fair.
Like,
you know what? That's a good point.
Each episode didn't have to bring up the fact that she's a writer. Basically, every single Zoe episode brings up the fact that she's a writer.
Although, I will say, in the end, I would say that was Lucy's main character trait, even though it took
her main character
6
trait.
albums to become a writer.
It is her main character trait, but she had, like, so much else going on. Like, she had everything with, like, even when she showed up later on, it wasn't because she was, like, writing things that she showed up. It was, like...
It was her final
to have
appearance,
a
though.
weird love triangle thing.
Oh, you mean in 50?
Yeah, or I guess not even a love triangle. It was, like, 3 guys going after her.
Yeah, I mean, it is called the triangled web, so I'll give you that. If they called it the quadrangled web, that would have been a lot more confusing of a reference for the title.
And then you, like, go back, and I didn't really reflect on it that much, like,
the
before
tetragonal
the triangled web. But to be fair, like, every album, basically up to 50, was out when we were kids. So I never really reflected deeply, because I didn't really understand analytical skills back then, on her relationship with, like, Kurt or her relationship with Jack.
Yeah.
And I didn't, like, really deeply appreciate them. Like, with Jack... he was also with Donna, so I never really thought of him as being, like, him and Lucy being exclusive or anything like that.
And we've talked about before, Isaac, too, would fit in there. Like, Lucy...
Yeah, Isaac, too. Like,
it was
honestly, Lucy spent more time with Isaac and with Kurt than with Jack.
I feel like they probably tried to get Isaac back for that, because it probably would have made more sense. Because Jimmy even says, and he was like, I mean, I never really hung out with Lucy, but, you know, silently as this, like, secret crush. Which is kind of funny.
That's all of Jimmy's crushes in the show are just silent secret crushes, and then the one time he finally does have a girlfriend, it's a new character, and then they break up immediately.
Bye, Felicia.
Rip to Jimmy.
So, anyways, the episode. I really like... Okay, first off, Fanny's reaction to being like, yeah, I'm going to make you wait a year for every time you've asked me to marry you in this sentence, this conversation, because you've only known me for 3 weeks, was like a great power move. But also Zoe being like, she made him wait 7 years. That's something like out of the Bible. I really like that reaction, because that is exactly what I would have said.
Yeah, same. Like, that was Jacob and Leah and Rachel kind of stuff, honestly. And, like, 7 years. That's insane. If you've
already been married and have children.
Pro tip, at this point, I feel like I shouldn't have to tell people this. If you meet someone and you love them and they love you and you both want to get married, don't wait a full 7 years to get married.
Yeah, you would have had more time to be married before she burned to death if you hadn't waited 7 years.
Oh, no.
But, I mean, I understand, like, she literally said, like, it's because we're Victorians and we need propriety.
I mean, I understand that, but even Victorians, like, that's a long time.
It is a long time, yes.
Like, I understand, like, 2 or 3 years seems like an appropriate number to me.
I know, she
from
was
a Victorian
mainly just
standpoint.
planning on him, because the last time she was like, okay, 7 years. And the last time he wasn't even really asking her to marry him. He was just being incredulous about it. So she was just kind of, you know.
Yeah, but then, like, they did wait that long.
Yeah, I know.
Is the thing. Like, it's one thing to just be clowning. It's another thing to actually be like, no, you have to uphold this.
To make the actual, to follow through on it on a scale of an extra year of your calendar life. Granted,
Yeah.
we know that's
Hot
how long
take.
they waited.
I understand that he really likes her, but I would have found someone who didn't make me wait 7 years. You know what you can do within those 7 years? You can find someone else who you really like and you can marry them and they probably won't burn to death.
And then get married again. Yeah, I feel like, though, I will grant it, at least that's probably the writing in the episode. I doubt that's how the conversation went, because I doubt that would have been actually recorded. I mean,
yeah.
It's Longfellow. He might have recorded it verbatim, so who knows?
You
Which brings me to, he had, because throughout this episode, there's a lot of him, like, reading different poems that he wrote that aren't Christmas bells, that are related to, like, things that were happening. And every time he reads the poems, he has like this very weird intonation, and there's like these pauses and the dynamics that he uses in his voice that are very strange, and the audio through the background is always very like strange and otherworldly, and there's like these echoey ghost voices.
It was weird.
Every time he read his poetry,
weird.
It was very weird vibes. It's like, the children's hour is when this comes to play. And then there's like also, this like haunting theremin is like the echoes of dead children's ghost laughter and stuff. I'm like, what's going on?
It was very Coraline-y, honestly, with like the kids whose eyes she has to find. But if I was Zoe, I probably would have left or like stayed out of politeness and just been very uncomfortable the whole 20 plus minutes. Because it's just Jason telling this very upsetting story, and then also every now and then he's just like, hit it, Uncle Willie, and then Wilson just starts singing operatically and like in a Hal Smith manner where there's just like not really music backing him.
Okay, this was the next thing I was gonna say.
I will say he did a very good job singing, but it was just very weird vibes, and if I was Zoe, I would have just been like sinking down in my seat.
There was
I just can't even imagine like Jillian in the background just like falling asleep or something because she's bored of the story, and then Wilson starts singing. She's like, oh my gosh.
This episode has had the weirdest vibes and then twist at the ending since the episode where everyone drowned and then it was Eugene in the imagination station. But I was going to say, bringing up the singing, the verses intermittently. So some of them are Wilson, some of them are Longfellow, I think, because they're definitely not all Wilson, but a bunch of the verses.
But it was still weird vibes.
Here's the thing.
Was singing, because you know, like present day Wilson was just belting, and you're like, calm down.
Here's the thing that makes it weird, because like you said, there's very little backing to the ones, especially that don't have the music box behind them. Because most,
and even like the music box, like the way they aren't just singing, like they are full on like belting. Well, the lines. There's a lot of power and just like a tiny, quiet little music box backing them.
And it's only
should have been like
faint little music happening for the Longfellow ones. And the really weird thing
it should have had brass instruments or something like that.
Most of the verses, especially because like the cheery ones were like on the bookends, the ones that they're singing in the middle that we're talking about are basically all sad. And basically all of those ones that are sad, they changed it into a minor key to help us convey like, oh, these are sad. And I get it because of the ups and downs of this song and the story, but it's weird to hear well-known song verses in general when they like flip it from a major into a minor key or vice versa. Especially when it's vocals with minimal backing like these, because when you don't have enough backing to immediately recognize like, oh, okay, it's changed into a minor key, it just, once you get enough musical context for it, before that, it just sounds like they're singing very wrong notes.
Yeah.
Is the thing.
That's why it took me like a little bit
to
get
you have to
into the singing
exactly.
Each time they start singing again.
You have to hear several notes where like the intervals change in the minor key. Like once you hear the minor third in there isn't enough, you hear a couple notes and you realize, oh, they changed it to a minor key. They're not just singing extremely out of tune, because you would hear the minor chords on the tonic on the first note probably if there was stronger backing behind it, because it's like only a faint melody that you can barely get. It's like you're basically just going off the vocals and it just sounds like they're singing out of tune.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't help that there's like no backing, because if there was backing, then you could be like, oh yes,
It would
they
start on a
are
major
on
first.
key.
It would start on a major or a minor first. I mean, right on the first chord, and you would hear, "Oh, this is minor now."
Yeah, but it just sounds like either like really sharp or really flat
Yeah.
at first, and it's just really bad. So
Uh,
like, yeah, I think they should have had like some brass instruments or something like that accompanying it,
something
because
that
they
was
were
more than a
singing.
melody, something that actually had a full 3-note chord behind it, so
Yeah,
you could
just
hear
like
the minor
something
intervals.
something that would be loud, like to accompany the power in the voices,
Uh-huh.
with like that's also playing the
The
melody,
loudness
so
of
we know they're
Wilson's
playing the
voice
right
was also
notes,
very funny to me, yes, because I'm just picturing
and
in the
has
antique
like a
shop, and he's
harmony
just...
and just like continuous background like melody. Like it's
I,
weird because
I
this is
do...
a song, this is like an episode about music,
Uh-huh.
and we basically only get the lyrics
It's...
and they take out the music, and there
I
should have been a lot more music in this episode.
I do get it on like an IRL level, like if you're in that situation in real life as a baritone, um, because he was singing to a music box that had the key already set, and if the key is a little high for your voice, then in order to make it sound good, you do have to project a lot in order for your voice to not like falter out or sound too airy. Which means in certain scenarios you can't really sing high unless you're projecting louder than it seems like you should be singing. I definitely get that. Granted, this is an episode, so they could have just changed the key of the music box.
Exactly,
But
exactly.
in a real life scenario, I
The thing
understand.
is, I would buy into your
Or
argument if
drop it in
this was
Austria.
real
I
life, but
know.
it's
I'm
not
saying
real
in a
life.
theoretical real life situation, I've been there. But
Yeah, which is why like I agree with you, except for in this case, because they could have changed it so it was
the
more comfortable or
the
something
only
like
other
that.
thing I have to say about the episode that I think is funny that I really noticed on the second time around is because it's kind of funny is when those situations, I understand it with wit, less so with other people, where someone brings up a topic like, oh, hey, listen, this music box, it's playing Have You Heard the Bells on Christmas Day? And then Jason's like, let me tell you the entire story off the top of my head, which Wit does all the time. It's like, okay, because he's Wit, and he literally wrote an encyclopedia.
Okay, but like I kind of low key do that with
Well,
things
no, but
too.
here's the thing: is I thought it was funny the second time until Jason's like, "Oh, I know this story. Here, I have a book on it that I read, and here I can show you." And it was like, okay, once you put it in the perspective of like Jason is like, wait a minute, this is a topic that I know about because I read a book about it, and now I can info dump on all the things I know from the book I read. I was like, absolutely relatable,
Yeah,
100%. When someone mentions something, you're like, I know about this. Let me tell you everything I remember.
which anyone who's ever watched literally 2 minutes of this episode or like any episode can
movie
just
with
confirm that you and I do that
yeah,
all the
anyone
time.
who's watched
So
any movie with you or ever mentioned anyone from Greek mythology around you
yeah,
or
Agamemnon.
most parts of history, we are all Clytemnestra.
Or any fairy tales or
Yeah,
anything.
yeah.
Any
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 historical,
gothic lit.
any
I
gothic lit,
just
any historical
Gothic
children's lit.
lit, especially Frankenstein. Anyone literally
Anyway,
like looks at me and mentions Frankenstein, or I like hear an allusion to Frankenstein
or
in
Monte
literally anything
Cristo.
I'm watching, and I snap. Someone says Frankenstein's monster to me, and my soul splits in half.
Anyone who
Like,
watched, anyone who watched our BTV Revenge review.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Anyway.
Anyways, yeah, that's everything I had to say about this episode.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to
Yeah,
say
as I
either.
was listening to the story of it, and I was basically like, okay, he got Horatio Spafford, and that's
Mhm.
Horatio Spafforded. My
Yeah,
apostrophe D kind of got lost in there, but
we were basically on the same page that this is like it is well, but
Christmas,
somehow sadder and Christmas, and also plot at the end.
and then
Suddenly,
also surprise.
surprise, murder, street starts. You're all gonna die.
Yeah, I do like the comparison I made to like the same level of like just the weird kind of liminal, like what's going on, this is so confusing totally, and it's like I'm just kind of like in a weird emotional void, and then all of a sudden it all changes at the end in the last 20 seconds.
See, I think the funny thing is you and I were
Eugene's
both playing games
as
when
Eugene
we
what's
listened to this
called, I
for
always
the
forget the
first
name of that
time.
episode.
Which
Eugene
one?
gets eaten by a shark and everyone else
Oh.
also gets eaten by a shark.
I don't remember.
It is...
Do you want me to check?
I'm checking.
Okay.
It is not that album. It is Out to Sea.
Yeah.
There's so many albums. The Adventures in Odyssey Club has been going every time I look at the album covers for a lot longer than I feel like it has.
Yeah. I think the really funny thing about this episode is that you and I were both like playing games the first time we heard it. So we were both kind of in that mind space where it's like, okay, I'm listening, I am retaining things, but at the same time, my mind is like slightly wandering a little bit. And then in the last minute, we were both like, hold on, what did you just say about plot?
Yeah.
Because that really, I like turned
off
my game.
I didn't see it coming.
When I realized plot was happening, and then I was just like, okay, you have my full attention now.
This episode comes with lore?
Word, there's lore in this.
Yeah. I'm glad I know the story of the song because I like the song. Overall, definitely, there's some interesting choices with the audio design. And basically, I mean, not just the poetry reading, but basically every word that Longfellow says in this entire episode is said with an absolutely bizarre intonation of like stilted Victorian kind of ways that he's like Victorian Christopher Walken in the way that he reads things.
Which also comes through a little bit in the singing, unfortunately.
Yeah, especially the way that he reads the poetry. It's just like these very long, it's like everything is very dark in the way that he reads the poems very slowly with very long contemplative pauses. And then there's just like the shadow realm noises in the background.
You know what my reaction to this episode is? It's like, what's his face from Knives Out? The blonde guy, James Bond.
Daniel Craig.
Yeah, Daniel Craig from James Bond was like, it makes no sense. Compels me, though.
Yeah.
It was me at the end with the lore being introduced. It was just...
Oh, good movie.
Knives Out's a good movie. Go watch.
Did I tell you I watched it with Alex like 2 days after we got back?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What'd you watch it on?
Amazon Prime on the PS4.
Oh, cool. Did they like it?
Yeah, they really liked it.
How was it second watch for you?
It's good.
Yeah. Did you like it more on the second watch?
Well, I feel like I got... Anyways, I don't want to spoil this fantastic...
Yes or no?
Because my first watch was like a first and a half watch, kind of. So it was kind of a very interesting cinematic experience for me.
Knowing one line doesn't make it a half anyway.
It affected
Just
a lot.
A huge spoiler on your first watch.
I'll say the first watch was interesting me just because, like, the most interesting me just because of the way that it was figuring things out. That's
me watching basically any movie with a big plot twist, like Shutter Island. Me trying to suss out what's happening.
Anyways.
I'm gonna...
Go watch Knives Out. It is
I don't know what to give this.
Phenomenal movie.
Honestly, I didn't really like this episode at all.
Well, yeah, that's what I was working up to. I was like, I mean, it has some interesting aspects to it, certainly.
It has interesting design
and then
choices.
Plot at the end, suddenly, and then suddenly plot.
I think it's perplexing that Phil wrote it.
Yeah.
That's what surprised me when you said Phil wrote this one. I don't know who I expected it to be.
I was surprised when I read it.
Because we were just on a writer appreciation kick, and I don't think any of the writers for the series are bad, like, at all. I think they're all great. And every one of the writers has had, like, a odd episode, though. And this episode was very odd, and it just surprised me that Phil wrote it. This episode was just really clunky in, like, a lot of different aspects.
It was weird in basically every aspect of it. Though,
which the only thing that I could say, I will say it was pretty much
unless you mean tonally in a musical sense.
Not tonally in a musical sense. I mean, like, it was very, like, morose for the whole episode.
Yes.
And the only thing that would have made it also clunky tonally is if Jillian was there.
Oh,
Which,
but it would have
unfortunately,
improved.
for the writers, Phil, she was there. So I'm going to give this an
Yeah.
episode
5 out of 5 for Jillian.
I don't know. I kind of feel like I want to give it like a 0.5 out of 5. I don't hate it, but I feel like it doesn't really offer anything.
I'm going to give it a 2.8 out of 5.
I don't really... It's weird because Okay, you know, I'll give it like a 1 out of 5, because the thing is, I don't hate it. I just feel like it doesn't really offer anything. I did learn new stuff, which I did find interesting.
Can't sum up the end of it better in my mind now than just replaying it makes no sense. Compels me, though. That's really good.
That's the best summary I can come up with for the reaction you have at the ending of this, because it's just so out of the blue.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was some interesting historical stuff I learned in this episode.
Yeah.
Like Devin said, I like this song too, so it was cool to learn more about it. I do think it's interesting when you find songs that are like autobiographical in nature that you can use to like do a reading of the author's life, which you're not always supposed to do that because that can introduce too much bias, me being all English majory with like the different
Well, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. That's the whole point of Death of an Author.
Yeah. So it depends on what like lenses you want to analyze the work with.
Yes.
And yeah, how much you want to take.
Usually I say analyze it with both is good. It's important to consider the context in which it was written and the context in which it stands alone.
That's true. I agree with that. That's why I have a hard time with Harry Potter now.
Yeah.
And lots of other works. Like, I want to watch Kill Bill again really bad, but I also really do not.
Understandable.
I am glad I watched it, though, before I knew anything about Tarantino. Yeah. 1 out of 5. I don't... Oh, yeah, is my review of this episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and 2.7 for me, I said. Or 2.8, one of those two. 2.7.
I will say I don't hate this episode. I feel like we could take this episode out. Just even like taking out the last minute.
And put it into a different episode.
I feel like even just if we completely took this episode out of album 70, including the last minute, we probably wouldn't miss anything from the main plot.
Probably. I mean, we don't even know what it's in regards to, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless like Jason makes a big deal about it later on. That would be the only difference they'll make.
What are we talking about next time?
The next 2 episodes in album 70, I guess.
Yes.
Which are both out now.
Yes.
So, yes, we will talk about them.
Yes.
They are Auto Response and Unrelatable. I'm assuming Auto Response is going to have like BZ or someone like that in it. Because Car.
Lightning McQueen.
Is going to have Lightning McQueen in it.
Okay, so until then, next time, thank you for joining us on our side of YouTube. I've been Devin Francis, also known as Dr. Blackguard. And
we spreading good vibes. Yeah,
despite the end.
Take.
Ignore the end part. And so, yes, thank you for joining us on the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast.
Bye.